This is the Sattler Files.
And welcome back. This is the Sports Files on the Sattler Files, as usual, joined by Adrian Barich. How are you, Barra?
Good, Jimmy. Yeah, how are you, mate? Good going on?
Mate, there's a lot going on, and I'm still in shock, as is every West Coast Eagles supporter, about last Thursday night.
Yeah, no, it's starting to wear off now, which is good, because if it was a fast shock, they really didn't fire a shot, did they? They just got completely pantsed, and going in as hot favourites and getting beaten like that, getting eliminated, it leaves a real sour taste in the mouth, and people are pointing the finger left, right and centre, and having a go at blokes like Jack Darling for a couple of incidents in the game, and Elliot Yo's not a big game player, and Mark Lacroix, is he going to retire? And yeah, it's been a fair bit of fallout, but I think they've steadied the ship now. They've made a few delistings. There's probably a few blokes that might be looking around at what their prospects are, but I think the Eagles will be looking at recruitment as well. And I know they're sort of heavily looking at Hayden Ballantyne from Fremantle. They need a ruckman, so they're tossing up Drew Petrie from North Melbourne, and also Mitch Clark from Geelong, perhaps.
Okay, yep.
Because Nick Nat's out for a year, and it looks like Lycett could be 4 to 6 months if that PCL's not great. So posterior cruciate ligament. So it's a bit going on, that's for sure.
Well, before we start on Drew Petrie and the rumours and whatever, I think that the Eagles actually lost that game at the selection table. I've got a lot of time for Adam Simpson, but as soon as Jeddah was replaced with a tall, I knew we were done, because the Bulldogs are always going to play that run and stun. And as much as you like Mitch Brown as a trier, well, that just means we had one less runner.
Yeah, it was weird. It's like they didn't make a decision. They had Lycett, who was going in under an injury cloud, and then they had Brown, who was fit, but, he's not really a ruckman. And they decided, we might need him. Simpson's saying that they played him as a defensive forward, which is a bit of a strange thing to say, but I don't know. They had their reasons, but it's kind of like they didn't make a decision. They should have either left Lycett out or not played Brown and played Redden or Duggan or one of those guys. But, yeah, and Lin Jong went down as well, one of their midfielders. So, really, they were lucky there, because they didn't even have their full complement going into the most of the match, the Bulldogs. So, yeah, certainly selection wasn't great. I don't know if it lost in the game, but the bye also didn't help in terms of it gave the Bulldogs an extra week to get ready, and they brought back those 5 stars, and 2 or 3 of them, like Liberatore and that, were fantastic, coming off 6 weeks break, and they made all the difference. The Eagles had too many passengers, a lot of guys in big games. There's a bit of a question mark, isn't there, Tim, don't you reckon? With the,
you've got Josh Hill, Cripps, Yo, and then obviously Lacroix too, Darling, the grand final and that. So, yeah, look, they need to do something pretty drastic next year to rectify that. I mean, on raw talent, they'll make the 8 again next year, but, geez, you want to find a bit of grunt, don't you?
Yeah, they need something. They don't need to recruit someone like Jeddah. And Redden was probably the jury's out, because he had a bit of a groin going in, and if he doesn't fire next year, they'll say that's a bad selection. Jeddah at this stage, we played not bad towards the end of the season, but it didn't really deliver what they wanted. So they need to get smarter. That's why it worries me if they're talking about Drew Petrie from North Melbourne, and he's 33, and he looks cooked, doesn't he? He looks done, and they're saying, we'll just get him in for a year, cover for Nick Nat, Lycett, in the ruck. And he's not really a ruckman anyway, so I don't know.
No, well, he's not. And I think they're panicking. Obviously the Lycett injury was obviously a lot worse. But, you wouldn't want to bring Petrie in. And I wouldn't have Zach Clark over from the Dockers. Mitch Clark, someone who I didn't think of. And, of course, if you go for someone through the draft initially, they're not going to stand up in the whole year. So they got a very important next 6 to 8 weeks ahead of them, haven't they? So it's a lot to unfold, because they've got nothing, have they? Because did Fraser McInnes, did he hold his spot on the list?
Yeah, he's still there. He was injured at the end of the year, so.
But he's not a true ruckman anyhow, is he?
He's not really a ruckman, is he? Yeah. So.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a pity about Nick Nat. I saw Nick Nat during the week, and he's banking on 12 months. So we're talking about him coming back late in the year, and sort of you wouldn't expect him to set the world on fire.
No.
So it's a massive injury, that one. It's just amazing that a bloke like that, you don't really see ruckmen do their ACLs much, and I guess he's such an athletic ruckman that he has to make sure it's completely right before he comes back. And he's got Mitch Brown and Mackenzie at the club have done it before him, and also Lecras to sort of study off and talk to, but I'm thinking that Mitch Brown and probably Mackenzie won't even be at the club, so he might have to do his own homework there.
Yeah, no, interesting. And Boomer Harvey, I mean, we won't become the North Coast Eagles, will we?
Yeah, surely the coach is smart enough to know that that's going to look bad if he starts hiring all his mates. I mean, all the coaches are his mates.
Yep.
Already, the assistant coaches. They've opened the door there for Peter Sumich, but I don't think he's going to walk through it. There's an assistant's role there, but I think Summer wants to be like the director of coaching. He wants to be elevated a bit, and I think they're looking for an assistant coach. So, yeah, I don't think the big Summer will be coming back. So it'll be interesting to see who they get as an assistant coach. I think they need someone. I think they need a bit of outside influence outside of the Eagles sort of North Melbourne scheme, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And the footy on the weekend lived up to everything we thought, except for the North game, obviously. I mean, Stevie J, I mean, what's he thinking? I mean, just a brain fade, wasn't it?
Yeah, just going back on that, the round of footy, you know what that means, don't you? That the bye will probably be here to stay. I reckon they'll go with it again because it only really affected the Eagles, and they won't really care about that, the AFL. And, you know, the other games are spectacular. And the Sydney Derby, the Giants getting up, they'd be that happy about that, the AFL, that the Giants are on track to be in the grand final, probably win the next 3 grand finals. In fact, they're probably a bit nervous that they're going too early, you know what I mean? They're thinking, oh, jeepers.
Yeah.
Pull back, boys. Pump the brakes, will you? Because this is looking bad.
Well, you're right there because Rory Lobb, he, as you said to me a couple of weeks ago, why would he leave GWS when they've got the next 3 or 4 grand finals to play in and come to West Coast and or Fremantle? No matter how homesick you are, mate, I think they'll do everything they can to keep him there.
That's so true. I mean, if he wants 300,000 reasons per year, he could probably find them. He'd probably make that much more coming home, but if I was him, I'd stay for another couple, see if you can win a couple of flags, and then come back on a bomb back to Western Australia. So the way it's going, you think that'll happen. But Stevie J, yeah, he's been getting away with it all year.
Yep.
He just got Kennedy in the wrong spot, and Kennedy just got is respected enough and also got hurt enough that he cops that week with his bad record and misses the preliminary final, which opens the door for maybe Reece Palmer. He's been on fire. You know, Reece Palmer in the local comp, I think the week before he had 37 and kicked 7 goals. And last week, same number of possessions, I think, kicked 1 goal 4. So you'd have to think he'd be a massive chance to come in for Stevie J and the former Docker.
He was a regular up until about 6 or 7 weeks ago, wasn't he?
Yeah, and he's just, those young blokes they've got, they've just gone past him. But whether he can hold on after that for the grand final, you'd think they'd get there now. You think the odds are a Geelong Giants grand final, which means I reckon the tickets would be cheap at the grand final, wouldn't they?
Yeah, I think so.
How many people would be going? I suppose everyone goes, but geez.
Are you prepared to call it now, Barry? Are you on GWS for the premiership or what?
Yeah, it's tricky. You'd like to go for them, but there's still that question mark about like Fremantle when they got there and got overawed, and the Eagles last year. Could that happen to the Giants if they got there? You'd probably go Geelong if they got there, given the team they've got. But yeah, it's intriguing. It's intriguing. Certainly different, isn't it?
Yeah, it's certainly different. And well, obviously we've got to get through this weekend. Hawks, Bulldogs. Who are you on there?
Oh man, I'm dying to say the Bulldogs because haven't won in 60 years or whatever it is. So you'd love to see them knock over the Hawks, but the Hawks were dead set unlucky at the end there, weren't they? And then Smith probably any other day I think he kicked the last 11 goals straight.
Yep.
And he missed that one to win the game, even after smiling. So yeah, I'll probably go the Hawks, I reckon, in that one, and the Bulldogs' brave effort. Yeah,
and the other one, Adelaide and Sydney in Sydney.
Gee, it's got to be Sydney, doesn't it? But there's every chance that the Crows could get up. But you'd at home, you'd have to tip Sydney, though. with those two fellas out, especially Tippett, it makes it a lot more even, doesn't it?
Yeah, but Tippett hasn't done a lot, has he? I mean, he's been out for half of the season, and Sydney have still finished on top. So, he's not like a Nat Nui. But yeah, the Crows with that 4-man forward line are pretty formidable. And that Sydney had Callum Mills goes out. Sydney though last week, their forward line was a bit like the Eagles. I mean, Buddy, even though he played well, he played too far up the ground, never got a goal. I don't think Isaac Heaney got a goal. McGlynn looks too old and slow. So Sydney, I'd be nervous if I was Sydney up there, even though it's at home.
Yeah, they'll be a different team at the G, won't they? The SCG. So.
Yeah, I think so. But I'm going for the Crows. Eddie Betts is just.
You're going for the boil over, are you?
I'm going for the boil over, mate. Eddie Betts is playing better than Cyril at the moment, and that's a big call, I think.
Eddie Betts, what a beauty he is. Carlton must be thinking, how the hell do we let him go? Unbelievable.
Well, they're still wondering about the Juddy Kennedy deal from all those years ago. I mean, Kennedy's probably been better for the Eagles rather than Juddy for Carlton. In all honesty, I mean, Juddy won a Brownlow at Carlton, but that's just an individual accolade. And I think they only played one or two finals in his time there. So you'd have to say Kennedy was the better of that deal.
Yeah, I think the Eagles will end up winning that one. But Juddy was a pretty special player, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. And you got any trade rumours for us, Barry? Anything out of Fremantle?
Well, I think that I think for sure that obviously Maine's gone.
Yeah, I heard Collingwood were offering him a 4-year deal.
Yeah, no, it's hard to believe, isn't it? But looks like that's going to happen. And obviously Ballantyne's trying to get to West Coast as hard as he can. And you know what? If they could package up Jonathan Griffin and Ballantyne, the Eagles should go for it and give Fremantle what they want.
That's not a bad call.
Then they get what they need, and they can give Fremantle whatever they want. So that'll happen as well.
Good call.
West Coast, like I said, I think Brown and McKenzie will be gone as well, which is unfortunate. But Brown could be back at Collingwood, either playing with his brother or following in his brother's footsteps as he moves somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly. One of them might be going to North. Okay, mate. Well, I'll let you go. Anything interesting on Channel 7 News tonight?
I just love that story about Kim Mickle, the javelin thrower, threw her arm out at the Olympics, has now been signed for football for the Dockers for their first ever AFL women's competition. I don't think they're going to call it that, AFL, AWFL, because it's spelled awful. So I think they're going to avoid that. But Kimmy Mickle, look out for her, mate. She's going to be spectacular in the first season of the national comp, playing for the Dockers in the purple, who she loves.
A few shirt fronts from her. Mate, as always, thank you for your time today, and I'll let you get back to what you sound like you need to importantly do.
Yeah, just pick up the kids.
I can hear that, mate.
Subi Primary.
All the best.
All the best.
Cheers, Barra.
This is the Sattler Files.
And welcome back to the Sports Files, as usual, joined by my good friend Ric Gloede. How are you, Ric?
Very well, thanks, Tim. Hope you're well.
Oh, mate, I'm struggling along. That's okay. But I'm interested, as usual, to hear what you have to say about sport, because you were at the West Coast game last week, and then you're at the Waffle game, and we're going to talk a bit of Waffle in a moment. But just quickly, your views on the Eagles' demise?
Yeah, well, I think personally, like you, that they selected the wrong side, but I think they were also ambushed, Tim, because I really think that the other three top sides they beat in the weeks before the finals were putting legs into their teams and lacked a bit of pace, and then tapered off before the finals, and you could see what GWS did on. And then the Bulldogs were sensational. They were just so far over and above the Eagles as a joke.
Well, that's it. The Eagles looked flat, didn't they? They looked
they
slow.
Did, they missed 4 or 5 quite easy goals when the game was still there to be won. And if they'd kicked those goals, I mean, Kennedy missed one that was a sitter. Lacroix missed 2 that are bed and breakfast for him. Yo missed 1. And there was one other, I think. Those goals would have made the game very, very even. It might have been a different story.
Well, it's a long summer for the club and a lot of those players, but I think it's going to be even longer for Jack Darling, because he's got those 2, misdemeanors or whatever. I don't know what we'd call them. I don't know what the coach. I remember Mick Malthouse used to make them put their hand up and acknowledge a mistake. But so the first one we'll talk about is where he played on in the goal square. That was just a complete lack of awareness, I thought.
Yes, it was. And he might have seen things from a different point of view than we did. He might have thought there was no one on him and couldn't see him. I don't know. It was just I bet he regrets it and will do forever. But it was the same as the one he dropped in the grand final too. That was a little bit of a bad one. But Jack Darling's done a lot of things to win games for the Eagles too. And I think they're a bit hard on him, saying he dropped his head. And that happens from time to time, and you don't know the reason why. But better footballers than him have done it from time to time. And I wouldn't certainly get rid of Jack Darling out of that team. He's only 24 years of age.
No, but I just think it's going to be a long summer. I mean, do you think he pulled out of that, Mark, or did he just judge it wrong? I mean, sometimes when you've got that sort of going back and something at the corner of your eye, I think your vision gets affected. I don't think he physically shirked the contest. I just think it looked worse.
I'm a very good friend of Mark Bairstow.
Yep.
And I saw Mark Bairstow in the 2004 grand final.
Yep.
No, between the Eagles and
Geelong. 94
grand final. And he was accused of dropping his head in a similar way. Mark Bairstow is one of the bravest, heroic people I've ever met, and I can't imagine him doing that. And there are a lot of his teammates who felt the same way too. And I'm inclined to give a player the benefit of the doubt under those circumstances. He's going to cop all sorts of crap, not only from the press but also from other teams, and maybe some of his own people will be shy-acking with him a bit, but I bet he doesn't do it again.
No, and look, I think the best thing for the Eagles Football Club, now obviously a few boys have had surgery already, and Lysette's heading off to Melbourne for a second opinion on that knee, but, you know, we talk about the downtime and Mad Monday and whatever not being good for them, but for a club like that that's take a bit of a battering, you know, there's nothing better than you get back with the boys, you have a few beers and you tighten up your friendship and just make a few
a little
packs.
Bit of bonding won't go astray, will it? And quite frankly, Eagles have had a good year.
Yes, they won 16 and that would have got them in top 4 last year.
One disappointing match and, you know, I think they won 8 or 9 out of the last 10, which is a pretty good result. Probably there's a couple there that might be just getting towards the end of their time. I don't know about Lacroix. I love Lacroix. But I wonder whether or not he's just getting that little bit older and he's lost a little bit of spark.
He's only 29.
Yeah, I hope not. He's a very exciting player, but they seem to be demanding another small forward, don't they? A Walters or
a Ballantyne.
Yep.
As I said, it's the silly season floating around because Brett Deledio at Richmond's rumoured to be on the move. Harvey wants to play again. Petrie as a ruckman at West Coast. Mackenzie, Brown.
Talking about Harvey and Petrie and these boys, I was very disappointed to see Brayshaw slipping into young Wells this week, who looks like he's looking for a transfer and wouldn't be a bad addition to a West Coast or a Dockers side. But immediately I saw that the names Petrie, Harvey, Ferrido and Del Santo came to mind. A little bit tough when you just sack 4 people in the most stupid way that you could possibly do it, to then start complaining because maybe some of your players want to leave, you know?
Well, there's an interesting development on that. Brad Scott's apparently feeling the heat down at North Melbourne, and rumour has it he's sort of put an unofficial feeler out to Brisbane and sort of said if you wanted to get me, premiership player to back as a coach for an interview, I'd attend an interview. I don't rate Brad Scott. I think it'd be wrong for Brisbane because they have this history of, the premiership players. Michael Voss didn't work for them. Lepich didn't work. And I don't think Brad Scott's
they haven't had
coach.
The experience that Brad Scott's had. Scott's had the experience of working with a Melbourne club, a very good Melbourne club in terms of general administration and so forth, notwithstanding what happened last week. But there's still a good club and still great experience. And I wonder whether or not somewhere down the track, Vossi might end up being a good coach too, because he took it on straight after playing. And that's always John Todd did that. He took South on as a 21-year-old as a coach and ended up coaching 3 different sides to Waffle Premierships when Waffle Premierships really meant something.
Yeah, Vossi's been at Port Adelaide though, and they're bad.
He's working at Port Adelaide,
he's
and
not setting the world on fire. We heard from Adrian Barich then that Peter Simic doesn't look like he'll go back to the Eagles as an assistant coach. He wants a director of coaching role. There is one at Brisbane, but there's a fella from Adelaide called David Noble who's the favourite to get that. Maybe Suma could end up at Adelaide with Don Pike, an ex-premiership mate, but he apparently he won't be at the Eagles. Which
I threw out Essendon a week or so ago, mate.
Yeah, we're still waiting on that. Waiting on that one.
I'll hang my hat on that a little bit.
So let's get away from the rumours. We're coming up this week. Who do you like this week?
Well, I really was very impressed by the Bulldogs, and I think they've got enormous incentive. Whether the Hawks can come good again, you can never underestimate the Hawks, can you? Great side, players like Burgoyne and Rioli and Hodge and Mitchell, and the Bulldogs have really got great pace, Tim, and I think that might catch the Hawks out in their forward line or in their back line even. Their back line is a little bit small and a little bit slow, and the Hawks, the Bulldogs' back line last week against the Eagles was superb.
Well, if the Bulldogs win, they come up against GWS up in Sydney at Spotless Stadium. Only 24,000 going to take it. Now, that would be an interesting game because two of the youngest teams in the AFL and both run and gun sort of teams. So, I like Hawthorn, and I'm a sentimentalist 4 in a row, but I'm going for the Bulldogs, I think.
Yeah. I just think their pace might tell and the incentive they've got. It's very, very hard for a side to get a four-piece, isn't it? Very, very hard. And this might be where the Hawks run out of luck.
The only other thing with the Bulldogs, though, that we do have to be wary of, after a long injury layoff, which they had those 5 or 6 players, you can get back first up and play a good game, bit on an adrenaline and whatever, and you'd had the rest. But now this week, the sore spots are there, and up
against a very, very good coach.
Yeah, so they may not play. If Liberatore plays as well as he does that again, I think McRae came back in.
They said Daniels earlier on, but I think Liberatore will play on Mitchell myself, or maybe Hodge.
Yeah,
and I think one who might just be getting a little bit tired in the legs is Hodgie. Hodgie was throwing the fists around and all sorts of other things last week, which is. What happens when players get frustrated not being able to get their own way, and Hodges used to getting his own way.
Interesting that Hawthorn, regardless of what happens next week, next season they're going to get Jager O'Mara. That's an official. He said he wants to go there. And then the other rumour is Tom Mitchell from Sydney. So you put those two back into their midfield next year, they're going to be up and about.
I'm going to ask the question, surely they've got a salary cap problem doing this.
Well, no. All the older boys, Hodge, Lewis and Burgoyne, have signed 1-year contract extensions and taken massive pay cuts just to get in for the year. So that's how they do it. And Bradley Hill he's out the door. He'll be coming to Freo for sure. So there's a good $500,000 or $600,000. But O'Mara, he'd be a $500,000 a year player. And I can't, Tom Mitchell's a regular at Sydney. I just don't understand why he wants to leave Sydney. He had a bit of bitterness towards them in the early part of last year.
He found it hard to get picked,
he was in the Resis. Then when he's come in, the last 30, 40 games, he's been consistent. And he would be the lowest paid midfielder. And if Hawthorn are dangling money, then why wouldn't he? But I'm surprised that he'd want to go.
His dad's got a history at Sydney too, hasn't he?
Yep.
His dad was a great player.
His father was a fantastic player.
I mean, really, you can't blame the players these days when the clubs just treat it like a meat market, and that's what they do.
Yep. Adelaide and Sydney, who would you like there?
Well, I've liked both of them when they've come over here this year. They've been very, very impressive. But I think Sydney's lost Tippett by the looks of it, and the young up-and-coming rising star, who's a real good player.
Yep.
And Adelaide are pretty untouched, and as you said earlier, Eddie Betts has struck a real gold reef of form, and what an exciting player. And it's interesting to hear someone say he's playing better than Cyril.
I think he is.
And I think that last week's game was a superb effort, really terrific.
What he did last week, the one where he got front and centre and kicked the goal, off the pack.
Wonderful.
If you've got kids who want to play forward as you tape that and you just show it back to them time and time again. But the thing is, sometimes, Rick, you can't teach that. That's an innate skill.
That's right.
He's just a ball magnet. He just
the
knows
best front
where he
and
is.
centre man I've seen, and up until now, was Ackermanis.
Okay, yep.
Ackermanis front and centre was a terrific player. But this kid, Eddie, he can do anything. His goals from the boundary line and his overhead marking. He took a mark on the ground the other day, which was terrific. But anyway, I'm sort of hoping Adelaide Adelaide do go there, because then, the Swans and the Hawks have been up there for a couple of years. It'd be good to see a little bit of new blood in the finals, mate.
Yeah, I'm tipping it now. I think Geelong and GWS in the grand final.
Yep.
And the grand final, Adrian Barich was just commenting, saying, we may not fill the stadium. The grand final is a bit like Melbourne Cup now. I mean, if this doesn't matter who's playing, if there's tickets available, they'll get 100,000 to the MCG.
They always fill it.
Yep. It doesn't matter, and people, you'll find 50,000 GWS supporters on the day because they don't like Geelong. Those funny sort of things that happen. Same with when the West Coast Eagles won in 2006. There was a huge West Coast contingent there, all following Chris Judd. All the young kids because they liked him. So no problem there. They'll fill it out. Now, Rick, we're running out of time. We need to move on to the waffle. Your team, South Fremantle, went down on the weekend.
Yes, we had our chances. We going into the third quarter, we had all the ball in the first 10, 15 minutes and couldn't kick a goal, couldn't even kick a point. We kept kicking them out on the full. There's a big, strong wind blowing there and we never took advantage of it. And when that 10 minutes ran out, Subi did too, and they just kept going. Very, very good side, Subi, but South had their chances and they'll have them again if they can get over the Peel Football Club. Hams comes back, and Hams is a terrific addition to that side.
What about the young Indigenous boy for Subi? What's his name?
Sensational, Liam Ryan.
Yeah, get drafted?
Has to.
Really?
Has to. He's just like Eddie Betts.
Oh, okay.
He's very similar. Takes a beautiful high mark, and he's able to run with the ball. He's always on balance. He's been playing on a couple of good South kids, Guglielmana and a few of these boys that are very good taggers. Just ran rings around and turned them inside out, Tim. Very good player. If he doesn't get drafted, I'll go He.
Oh, good.
And I hope he gets drafted by the Eagles or Dockers.
Yes, well, we need to keep that talent WA. What about the big ruckman for South? What's his name again?
Oh, he's a terrific player, Higgins.
Yeah, is he
he's
a chance?
Very good player.
Yeah, would you pick him up at West Coast?
I'd pick him up at West Coast in the current situation they're in. I'd rather have him than Petrie.
Yeah, well, that's what I was saying.
Every day of the week.
Yeah, good. Especially
He's a
with
very
Cox.
hard-working, good ruckman that he plays taller than he looks, Tim. He's but the other boy I'd look at if I were the Eagles is that guy Hannes. Is it Hannes?
Yeah, from Freo.
He's a Peel boy. But I saw him play a few weeks ago against East Perth down at Peel. He was terrific.
He just can't get on the park. Remember he did his hamstring tendon.
I've got him wrong. There's not Hannes.
There's Hannes.
Yeah.
Hannes
I always get him mixed up with the other boy that's a full forward.
Taberner?
Yeah, no.
Apeness?
Apeness,
yeah. No, Tanner's, he's been delisted, but he just did his hamstring tendon. He's had surgery, which is, hamstring tendons are only 12 weeks, but he could never get on the park. Similar to Apeness, those two big fellas just couldn't get on the park. But certainly, West Coast it's a critical situation for them.
If they can't get Lob.
They won't get Lob, mate. With GWS, unless GWS win the premiership this year. And I believe there's a rumour that, very strong rumour, a good friend of mine by the name of Ric Gloede is presenting the Sandover Medal on Monday night, the 19th.
Yes, I will be. Yeah, that's my duty as the chairman of the Waffle President's Council, and it's a great privilege, and I'll be delighted to present it to whoever wins it. It's such a historic award, and I'm thrilled to bits to be able to be given the opportunity, Tim.
And your favourites?
I think the boy from Claremont, Bolton, I think
yep.
he's probably going to be close to it. Hamsey would have been up there,
but he's reported.
But he lost a little bit of impetus going into the last round or so and got it back again near the end. A bit unfortunate to get put out. Hamsey was tagged ferociously by the West Perth players in that game. But, mate, we haven't mentioned the Peel West Perth game from last week.
Well, we were trying to stay away from that because the West Perth president, he likes to... what's his name again?
His name is Brett Raponi, and he's a very, very good president. Loves his club, loves the waffle. But he is a press magnate. He does tend to get in the press, but I think he's got an argument in this case. It's an argument caused by circumstances, because if the Dockers had have been in the finals, you would never have had 17 players playing in a waffle final.
Yep.
And you may not have had hardly any, as was evidenced by last year. And also the fact, I suppose you could say, that that South beat them by almost the same amount the week before West Perth. But it's something that has exposed the partnership system a little bit, but that's going to be turned around, mate. That's something that can be changed, and I just think that the best thing that came out of it is it'll probably bring a big crowd to Fremantle Oval on Sunday for the game between South and West Perth.
Well, the thing is, I mean, Subi beat East Perth in the grand final with the alignment clubs, so good teams always beat strong individuals and whatever. So I wouldn't be, if it was Subi and Peel that go into the grand. I know you'd prefer your beloved South to be there, but if it's Subi and Peel, I'll still back Subi for the grand final.
Yeah, Subi very good. We are looking at the South Australian system and the VFL system at the moment. They're a little bit better than ours in terms of coping with that situation that arose. And let's face it, it's a one-off. I can't see it happening again. No. There's easy ways to stop it. You can cap the amount of players that can play, or you can increase the amount of games they have to play to qualify. But you can't really have an almost full professional side against a semi-professional side. They're going to beat you most days.
Well, we'll see what happens. I would expect this weekend down at Fremantle Oval, beautiful spring day. You can catch the train down, go to the markets, have lunch or something. I reckon the Waffle will be opening for 5,000 people down at Fremantle Oval.
I'm sure they'll get that many. They had that many, I think, at the game between South and West Perth. They said 3-8. I think Sicko might have been on the gate counting the numbers.
So maybe we might get 6 or 7, because there will be a strong percentage of Fremantle supporters who don't want to travel down to Peel, because Peel have played their 2 finals down in Mandurah at Rushton Park. Haven't gone down to see them. But I think there'll be a strong Fremantle supporter base who want to see these 17 players in action in the future. The
only downside, I guess, is that the Peel supporters don't travel too well, Tim. There's not too many of them travel.
Well, they don't have cars, or
they do, but they don't. They don't like leaving the city very much.
Okay. Well, I wonder why that is.
Well, let's hope they turn up. That's the main thing.
Well, that's what you threw me there, because my brother-in-law lives in Mandurah, and there is an aspersion cast on Mandurah people that.
Well, I don't mean to do that.
They're a bit,
but it is a long way to go. And
with that road now,
maybe they'll go because it's a final. A couple of other things. What about the Haynes setup? Have you seen that?
Jared Haynes.
Jared Haynes.
Is that a setup? Is it?
I reckon it is. There was a great article in the Australian today about it, and it seems to me that the boys might have set him up a little bit, especially with the amount of money that he's supposed to have given the fellow. He said it wasn't my money and it was a set up, and he said, I'm not going to give away $5,000 to anybody. His friends were there, and his friends did know the particular guy, and they were having a drink with him, and he thinks that it's just something that's been done. They didn't mean it in a vicious way, but it's come out very badly. Let's hope so. I'd like to give him the benefit of the doubt.
Look, my idea, and I'm all for multiculturalism in Australia, and I'm definitely for multiculturalism in Australian sport. Israel Folau, you wouldn't see anything going on, anything that could be deemed unsatisfactory public behaviour from him. Nick Natnui are the same. You know what I mean? So you make some certain decisions in life, even though he was just there and you don't put yourself in those situations. As I said, Israel Folau.
Very, very difficult.
Nick Nat wouldn't do it.
I think it must be a different scene in Sydney in the rugby league scene, because they're always in trouble, aren't they?
They are. I think... we have our own problems in Northbridge and whatever, but I think in the city and then a lot of the clubs, they end up clubbing in areas where, and smartphones are the worst thing these days because everyone can video everything and stuff like that. And also I really think, and I'm uneducated, but with the physique and whatever and the amount of running that they do in a rugby game compared to an AFL game, I'm not sure the boos after the game, whether they're not allowed to do it like an AFL team. But
I think there's a little bit more latitude there.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Talking about rugby, it was great to see our worst performing sporting team beat someone international on the weekend when the Wallabies beat the Yarpies.
Yeah, they made hard work of it, though, didn't they?
They certainly did, but the Yarpies are a good side, of course.
Yeah, I mean, it was a good win, but they certainly made hard work of it. Very hard work.
And just a little bit more, mate. Braden Davidson, did you see him win the long jump? I thought that was a terrific thing in the Rio Games. And
I've been very following the Paralympics very closely.
They're
And
wonderful people, aren't they?
wonderful people. I work with people with disabilities, and we call them ability. We take off the dis and say their ability. And what I love watching in those games is the sheer joy.
Yep.
When they win something. But me being an old track athlete from years ago, I loved the story where the 1,500 metre runner won the Olympic 1,500 metre on the track faster than the time at the able-bodied Olympics a month ago.
Is that right?
350, unbelievable.
Terrific.
So really good. And look, there's lots of inspiring stories. There was our triathlete who she was a blind triathlete, and they do the assisted run with, can't remember, the girl was one of our able-bodied triathletes 12 years ago who just stayed in the sport training. So certainly things like that, when you're working with her. I love watching the basketballers. That's like a roller derby. It's absolutely fantastic.
That's exciting, isn't it?
But I just hope that, Channel 7 are doing a good job. I really hope, though, that when they get home, we do these civic calls like we've done for the able-bodied and get them around Australia. And
I'm sure we will.
So that's been it, Rick. One final thing, as Adrian said, the big coup of the week was the Fremantle Dockers have picked up Kimberly Mickle as a solid halfback flanker.
Well, she's about as tough as Crowley, I reckon.
She is that. She'll give that. She'd be shirt fronting a few as she goes through there, as long as she gets the shoulder right, of course.
That's right. Yeah.
But what a great story. And that's what happens is, there's Aaron Phillips, one of the was represented Australia in basketball, is now going to the Crows as a player. So you'll find that high achievers, netball player, anyone that's done good high-end coordination sort of stuff and a good level of fitness, they'll go pretty high on this. And that's the only thing.
My experience with sports people is that they can play anything.
Yep.
When you're working with a team, a footy team, I was a team manager, you go out and play golf and tennis and things like that as a break in training,
Yep.
and they can do anything.
Yep.
You find players that are playing golf off a handicap of scratch or 4 or something like that.
Well, she can drive 200 metres, can Kimberly?
Yeah.
So she's pretty good. Okay, Rick, well, next week we will talk about your important date at the Sandover Medal.
Yes.
We'll know the Waffle Grand finalists, and we'll get a bit more of an analysis in that. And we'll know the preliminary finalists. So a lot more to happen in sport, and hopefully a few more player movements that we can get our teeth into.
Just a shame, mate, it's all coming to an end again.
Oh, I know.
I love my footy season.
We've got cricket. We can talk about that.
Yeah.
Anyhow, that's been the Sports Files on the Sattler Files.
This is the Sattler Files.